Let's look at the present tenses. The first verb that we're going to talk is simple present tense. Simple present tense are the tenses that are talking about the generals and the frequencies. For example, the water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. It's a scientific fact that we're going to talk about. And whenever we're going to talk about the frequencies, for example, I go to the gym every day. Every day is the frequency adverb. So when we're going to use a frequency adverb with the verb, we have to use the simple present. So the structure of the simple present, we simply use subject, and after the subject we use the simple present verb. Simple present verb are the first form of the verbs that we use, for example, go and watch and etc. There are the simple present form of the verb. For example, the weather is freezing in the Alaska. So which one is the verb? Is the verb. Freezing, on the other hand, is the adjective. So there's another application for present simples. It's used in the future tenses, and it's usually used when we're talking about these timetables. For example, the movies. For example, when we're going to watch a movie and it's later on today, but it's not now. We're using it, we're putting it like this. We watch, or the cinema, we watch movie at 7 afternoon. So as you can see, we watch movie at 7 afternoon talks about an action that we're going to do in the future today, in the later today, but we use the simple present tenses. We will talk about this in detail in the future tenses sessions. Now let's look at another example. Okay, the present continuous. What are the structures for these tenses? As you can see, they really have a simple structure. First of all, we're going to use subject, and after subject we use to be verbs. To be verbs are am, is, and are. So am, is, are the to be verbs, and after that we put simple present verb, and after the simple present verb we use ing. So for example, I am playing tennis. As you can see, I am is as in to be verbs, play, simple present, ing, plus the etc. Okay, now we're going to talk about the difference between I always do and I'm always doing. What are the differences between these two verbs? We can see we use one modal verbs with the simple present and one with this present continuous. How this can change the meaning of a sentence? So, I always do means that I do something every time. So, it's important that we're talking about every time. It means that's a general fact that I do something each and every time. What I'm always doing means that I do something more than normal or more than often. We can discern this by the frequency of the action. So, in the simple present, we use it every time. On the other hand, in the present continuous, we use it more than often, more than normal. Not every time, not always. Okay, here's are some exemptions that we cannot use some verbs with the present continuous form. And why is that? Some verbs like see, hear, smell, taste, these verbs implicates the senses, and we cannot use the present continuous. For example, we cannot write this sentence. For example, I am seeing this is one, and you should say I see this. I hearing, I'm smelling, I'm tasting. These are all verbs that we can use only with these simple present tenses and not with the present continuous forms. And the other verbs are mean, like, know, want, need, and prefer. We cannot use them with the present continuous too. So for example, we cannot use I'm knowing you. We just say I know you. So keep that in mind. We're going to discuss some matter. How's the difference when we're going to use adjective in the simple present and the present continuous tenses? How is the meaning of an adjective could change in these two tenses? So for example, when we're telling that he is selfish and he is being selfish, how's the difference between these two verbs? Well, generally, he is selfish means that he is generally selfish and he doesn't concern about others generally, always, all the time. Okay, but the he is being selfish means that he He's selfish at a time, for the moment, for his actions that he has done at the moment, not always, okay? So as we can see, the meaning of an adjective could vastly change by the tenses. So keep that in mind too, and use the right form of the sentence, right form of the present when you're going to talk about something in your mind. So now let's look at the present perfect tenses. Well, usually present perfect tenses will talk about some things that happened in the past, but the effects is evident right now. Or sometimes it's give us the new information. For example, when we're talking that I have cut my hand, it means that I've cut my hands and I cut my hands in the past, and the effects is still evident right now. I can feel the effects. For example, my hands is still bleeding. It still hurts. Okay, so let's talk about the structure. How can we make present perfect tenses? So for making present perfect tenses, after the subject, we ought to use have and has plus past participles. Past participles, or abbreviation PP, are the third form of the verbs. There are two types of past participles, regular and irregulars. So in the regular ones, we don't need to memorize them, and with adding of an ed to the end of the verb, we can use both past or sometimes only the past participle, the third form of the verbs. For example, watch. The past form became watched. The past participle will become watched. As we can see, we just added an ed at the end of the verb. Okay, now let's look at another example for the irregular past participles. Let's look at verb go. What is the past for verb go? It's went. What is the past participles, or the third form of the verb go, is gone. As we can see, we have to memorize them, and we have to use them a lot in order to get these verbs memorized. And we can actively use these verbs when we actually practice in the writings context, so we could actually use them actively. Now, it was all of the present tenses. Well, there are another present tense called the present perfect continuous, which we will talk about in the following sessions. So don't forget to subscribe. Bye bye.